Okay. This little layer is quite interesting. You see here, boom, boom. Okay. I added a desaturation layer. Let me turn this on. So this is before, this is after. Now the reason I did that is because I want to take the focus away from this building. We got quite a bit of yellow going on here. You see, a little bit yellow tint. What I did is I kind of got rid of that, this and also this pink building here, to turn it more monochromatic, so it doesn't compete for first read. You see, when this on, whoops, this layer, with this on, you can see your eyes has tendency to go over here because of the color contrast, and I don't like that. Let's bring it down. And also, when something's further away from you, the color actually desaturates down, right? This has to do with light and how far a certain color could go. For example, blue could travel quite far, right? And whereas red diminishes quite quick. So, right? And this is the first step to painting. Before we do any kind of paint mark, I'm gonna balance out my light even further. So let me zoom out here. You can see, turn this layer on and off, that I darken up a lot of the areas here because I know in advance that I'm going to light this area, that this is going to be my focal point and this is going to be my secondary focal point. So it's going to read here and then go back up to this area up here, right? And so everything over here, over here, over here, I need to darken out to create a nice contrast for my main read in these areas. Okay, so let me pause Camtasia for a second and be right back. Okay, and we are back. So let's continue with this image. What you see here is the plate layer, actually named it plate, which is the layer group that controls all the manipulations for the original image in preparation for painting. The only thing I painted in this layer is actually the multiply layer you see here, which I talked about just a second ago, which darkens up the entire value in the areas I need, all the stuff over here. And just like the previous videos, I always have the saturation layer on that turns the whole image to black and white to check value. And in this case, it's not bad. But keep in mind that over here, we're going to do our main light source. So right now, the only focal point, the first thing your eye is going to probably see is right here. Right? But we're going to bring it back down to here with the second layer group here that you see called paint. And I'm going to turn off all these layers first of all. Seeing a quick preview of what's going to happen. Let's turn this layer on. All right, let's turn the black and white layer off. All right, here comes the fun stuff. So we need to destroy this building. We need to make it look like it's been in a war zone or whatever it's happened to it that it got all destroyed. Maybe there's a war going on. So for those who played the game Fallout 3, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, there's a lot of video games that take place in this kind of world. I think actually partially because it's fun to draw for concept guys. You know, because you could make little mistakes here and there, and it's fine, it's fun, and also it's kind of cool to make worlds that are like this because I think it's a little bit easier to do. Not everything's so clean and polished, so you could kind of just create planets of trash. You could planets of spaceship crashed. It's fun stuff to do for all the artists on board and programmers and whatnot. So I think that's why there's so many games takes place in this kind of world. And you can make any story happen. You can make guns made out of found parts, and just the limitations is basically unlimited, right, for this kind of world. So anyways, that's what we're trying to create here as well. So let's pick so this layer you can see, boom, we blew the building up, right? Just kind of completely put some holes and stuff in it. And the value I pick is basically from the picture itself. I zoom in here. So I basically took one of these values here and just started painting. Now, the paintbrush setting I use, so for example, I could do a few more, boom, bam, blow all these things up, take all these chunks out. Very simple, very quick, just to show that, but have some kind of control here that it looks natural. So if an explosion actually hit here, let me go back to my first layer. Boom. How will the crack and all these things run, right? Don't kind of just randomly put stuff. You can tell that there's some kind of central thing that happened here, either explosion or something crashed into it that created a crater direction that runs in these sections here that run out this way, right? So make stuff make sense, in a certain way. Of course, obviously, we have no idea if this is real or not, but at least make it visually designed out so it's not random. And you can see a piece of chunk from whatever this took place actually hit this building here and created a little hole here. And we did that by doing a little bit of copy and pasting. See here? So obviously this building here in the original plate didn't exist. So we just painted it out and copy and pasted some parts of that image right here back into here, just so the eye could connect. The human eye is actually quite easy to trick, and that's what matte painting and actually the entire movie is doing. Film is just a series of slideshows going at 24 frames a second, right? It's just a bunch of slideshows, and the entire movie is playing a lot of visual tricks on your eye to make you believe that what you're seeing is real. So in this case, the same thing. We're making the eye believe that there's a hole here simply because you see the same value here and the same value here, the same designs here, same design here, thinking that, oh, that must be a hole, even though this image is a 2D painting. It's not real. But your eye is starting to sense that, oh, this building's in front of this building and there's a hole here. So that's all that was. Okay, my brush setting is quite easy in Photoshop. I actually loaded up for those who are curious about how my brush settings are. I stick to mostly default Photoshop brushes, these round brushes. They work in general for almost 99% of everything I do. They work well. I have some specialized brushes I use for like certain things like smoke or textures, but in general, there's all these just these round brushes. The things I have on in Shape Dynamics, I have the size jitter on print pressure, which is the Wacom. Everything else is turned off. I have the other dynamics on, but I have opacity off. This is quite important. If I turn this on, which one of my brushes has it, I'll show you what it does. It doesn't act like a real paint. And I'll talk about that maybe now, about what this does. So opacity is off, flow is on because that's real, and I have smoothing. Smoothing basically makes the brush feel smooth. With it off, you get these kind of facets like a bad anti-alias lines. So with it on, it's very smooth. That's it. Everything else is off. So the thing about opacity. Let me make a new layer here. This brush here, my number 8 brush, has opacity turned on. So if you see this, see opacity is on print pressure. You can see what it does if I turn this off, this preview here. But on this brush, it's on. I use this for certain things, but I rarely use it all the time. See, with opacity on pen pressure, if I take just some funky colors here, the softer I press, the less the color comes on. Same with the value. But if I press hard, it's 100%. Press light, it does this. The reason why I have this off is because I learned painting the kind of traditional way. I learned using gouache, which some of you might probably never use before. It's something that industrial designers like to use because Sid Mead and these guys started with the gouache and made it quite famous in the industrial or in the entertainment world. So I also learned with gouache. And gouache is one of those materials that's quite challenging to use because it's sort of like a combination of oil and watercolor in one. But it doesn't matter in this case. What I'm trying to say here is that a real brush, if you mix paint, like if I mixed say red, okay, and I put red down, if I press the brush soft, it's not going to give me a pink color. Do you know what I'm saying? The only way to get this is to mix it with some water so it's diluted down. But there's no way I could press lightly on the brush to give me a lighter color. But in Photoshop, you could do that. See, if I press lightly, I get that. If I press hard, I get that. Something that is quite hard to do with a real brush, especially if you're working with gouache. The only way to get that light light value here and light color is by mixing water. So that's why I like to control it manually. I like to control all my values by how I want the paint to go on, not by pressing hard or soft on the Wacom. So, but this is completely a personal preference. There's a lot of people that paint with this brush on, with the opacity on, and makes beautiful stuff. So it doesn't matter. It's completely up to you. Photoshop is one of those tools, or digital painting actually, it's one of those things where there's literally unlimited ways to do everything. It's whatever you find comfortable. For me, I treat Photoshop like a traditional medium, like paint. So whatever I did in the real medium, I try to do it in Photoshop. That's all. It's very simple. So don't try to follow this kind of stuff. If you want to paint it your way, go ahead. So right now I'm just doing blobs of paint using the opacity because you could blend some very nice stuff. Okay. Anyways, let's delete this layer. It's kind of random. Okay. Boom. So this little bit about brush. Most of the time, I have my brushes on. All the other brushes have no opacity on. And the way I do it is I control it manually. So let's just do it again. Let's do a quick demo here. Let's pick a crazy color like pink. Yeah. So if I'm painting, see, this is what happens to the brush. I have no opacity at all. But I'm like, hey, I want to put some opacity here. So I pretend I mixed this brush with water. Boom, and now I have opacity. And I mix it even more water, and now I have very light pink coming over this building. But I'm doing this manually. I'm doing this by pressing the 1 through 9 key. So I have total control of the value versus letting the pen pressure control it. So again, personal preference, whatever you like doing, whatever you feel comfortable, it's fine. So let's get rid of that